Welcome back to HFI Protocol. Today's story shows how human fights aliens and never give up.
The food tray hit the floor with a metallic crash that echoed through the entire meal hall. Purple nutrient paste exploding across the polished floor. Julia, the human exchange student, stood frozen with her hands still extended where the tray had been. Above her, Vex loomed, all 7 feet of crimson-scaled Kraelor muscle, his forearms crossed in pairs across his massive chest, yellow eyes narrowed in amusement. Oops, Vex said, his fanged maw spreading into a grin. His ridge patterns along his spine flared darker. The little soft skin dropped her food. The meal hall went silent. 200 alien students stopped eating, compound eyes and sensor stalks swiveling toward the scene. Than, another Kraelor with deeper red scales and bronze undertones, stepped up to flank Vex's left side, all 4 of his arms hanging loose. Julia looked down at her spilled meal, looked up at Vex. Then, without a word, she bent down and started scooping the purple paste back into the tray with her bare hands. She's cleaning it up, Vex laughed. Look at the primitive. Doesn't even challenge. Jex, a small gray-green biped with large black eyes and twitching whiskers, half stood from a nearby table. Julia, don't... She held up one purple-stained hand without looking at him. Kept scooping. The paste squelched between her fingers as she methodically gathered it, her face completely blank. When the tray was full of floor-contaminated slop, she stood and walked toward the disposal unit. Vex's thick, muscular tail whipped out and blocked her path. Where do you think you're going, soft skin? Julia stopped, looked at the tail, looked at Vex. Move! Make me, Vex snarled, leaning down so his fanged face was inches from hers. Or are humans too weak to... She dumped the entire tray of floor paste directly onto his head. The meal hall exploded. Students jumped up, tables screeching. Purple slop slid down Vex's face, dripping off his ridge patterns, coating his scales. For 3 seconds, he stood completely still, yellow eyes wide. Then those eyes narrowed to slits of pure rage. You are dead. All 4 arms reached for her. Julia stepped back, hands rising into a loose guard. Okay. Combat challenge declared. Rook, the Sylthan combat instructor, skittered forward on her 6 chitinous legs, her blue-black exoskeleton gleaming, compound eyes reflecting purple. Her mandibles clicked rapidly. By Academy law, challenge accepted. Central arena, 1 rotation. Vex wiped paste from his eyes, scales shifting to darker crimson. I'm going to break every bone in her weak human body. Julia walked past him toward the exit. You can try. 1 rotation later, the central combat arena was packed. Students pressed against the observation barriers around the circular pit. The sandy floor had been raked smooth. Red emergency lighting along the edges cast everything in blood-red shadow. Vex entered first, his forearms flexing, each fist the size of Julia's head. His scales had darkened to almost black. Than stood at the barrier edge, all 4 arms gripping the rail. Crush her, Vex! The crowd roared, clicking, hissing, thrumming approval. Julia entered from the opposite gate in simple training clothes, purple paste washed off. Small, compact, completely dwarfed by the 7-foot Kraelor. She rolled her shoulders once and walked to the center. Rook skittered to the middle on her 6 legs, mandibles clicking. Standard combat rules: fight until submission, unconsciousness, or death. Her compound eyes swiveled to Julia. Human, you may withdraw. This Kraelor outweighs you by 300 pounds and has 4 times your arms. I'm good, Julia said. Your funeral, Vex laughed, cracking all 4 sets of knuckles. Rook's mandibles snapped once, the starting signal, and she scuttled backward. Vex charged immediately, all 4 arms reaching, fanged maw open in a battle roar that shook dust from the ceiling. His massive scaled form crossed the distance in 3 thundering strides. He swung with his upper right arm first, a haymaker that would have caved in a door. Julia wasn't there. She'd stepped inside his reach, impossibly close, moving under the punch. Her elbow cracked into his solar plexus. The impact sounded like a hammer hitting meat. Vex's eyes bulged. Air exploded from his lungs. But he had 3 more arms, and they all grabbed simultaneously. She twisted, impossibly fluid, her body bending in ways Kraelor's spines couldn't follow. One hand caught his lower left wrist, redirecting it. Her other hand struck, palm heel to his elbow joint, hyperextending it with a wet pop. Vex screamed. His lower left arm hung at a wrong angle. What? Than started from the barrier. Vex swung wild with his remaining three arms, rage overriding pain. Julia ducked under the first, slipped past the second, and caught the third. For a moment they were locked, her two hands on his upper left wrist. He grinned through pain, started to lift her off the ground. Kraelor's strength was legendary. Then she did something with her grip, some twist of hands and shift of body weight, and Vex's own momentum carried him forward. She dropped, rolled backward, her feet planting in his midsection. Basic judo throw, executed perfectly. Vex flew. All 7 feet and 400 pounds of scaled warrior muscle sailed over her, crashed into the sand hard enough to create a crater. His ridge patterns flared random colors in shock. The arena went silent. Julia rolled to her feet, breathing steady, guard up. Vex lay in the crater, 3 functional arms scrabbling at sand, yellow eyes wide. He started to push himself up. She stepped on his spine, pinning him flat, dropped to one knee on his back, her arm wrapped around his throat. A rear naked choke, textbook clean. Her other hand braced against the back of his head. Tap out, she said quietly. Vex thrashed, all 3 good arms clawing at her, at the sand. His scales shifted through rapid color. Changes, crimson to black to red-purple. His fanged maw opened and closed uselessly. Tap, out, she squeezed tighter. 30 seconds later, Vex's 3 good arms went limp. His yellow eyes rolled back. His massive body went slack. Julia held the choke for exactly 2 seconds more, then released and stood. She stepped away, hands dropping to her sides. Rook's mandibles clicked in the stunned silence. Finally, winner! Human Julia by submission. The arena stayed silent for 3 heartbeats. Then Jex jumped onto the barrier railing, his whiskers quivering, his small body practically vibrating. That's my friend. The medical wing corridor was quiet, soft blue bioluminescent strips along the walls casting gentle light. Through observation windows, recovery pods hummed, treating student injuries. Than sat on a bench outside Vex's pod, all 4 of his arms hanging between his legs, bronze undertones dimmed. Julia walked past, heading toward the exit. Wait, Than called. His voice was different, smaller, less certain. He stood, his massive frame somehow diminished. Vex is my clutch brother. We came from the same breeding pit. When you're Kraelor, you're taught that might makes right, that warriors who can't fight don't deserve respect. Julia stopped, didn't turn around. But you... Than's scales shifted to pale red. You're half his size, half his weight, half his arms. And you dropped him like he was nothing. How did you... Judo, Julia said. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, Krav Maga, Muay Thai. She finally turned, meeting his eyes. On Earth, we figured out a long time ago that size doesn't matter as much as technique. That 4 arms are useless if you don't know what to do with them. Than's mandibles worked silently. His forearms hung limp. We mocked you, called you weak, called you primitive. You did, Julia agreed. I don't know how to... His scales shifted through multiple colors rapidly. You could start, Julia said, her voice still flat, but with maybe the smallest hint of something else, by not throwing people's lunch on the floor. She walked away down the corridor. Behind her, through the observation window, Vex started to stir in his recovery pod, his broken arm already being regrown, his pride, perhaps, taking longer to heal. 3 days later, the meal hall filled with the usual chaos. Julia walked in carrying her tray, purple nutrient paste and protein cubes that vaguely resembled food. She headed for her usual table in the corner, the one where she and Jex ate alone. Human Julia. The voice was gravelly, ancient, carrying weight that made conversations pause. Vorn stood blocking her path, a Kraelor elder, his scales covered in battle scars, one eye clouded white. But his 3 good arms, he'd lost one in some long-ago war, still corded with muscle. He was an Academy combat legend. Sit with me. It wasn't a request. Julia followed the ancient Kraelor to a table near the center, prime real estate reserved for highest-ranked warriors. Other students scrambled out of the way as Vorn's massive, scarred form approached. He sat, the bench groaning. Julia sat across from him. Vorn studied her with his one good eye, yellow iris bright against the clouded white. His ridge patterns were faded with age, battle scars crisscrossing his crimson scales. I watched your match with young Vex. Okay, Julia said. I have trained Kraelor warriors for 83 cycles, Vorn continued, his gravelly voice carrying to nearby tables. Students were openly staring. I have seen thousands of combat challenges, hundreds of species. But what you did, redirecting force, using momentum against itself, targeting structural weak points, his mandibles clicked thoughtfully. This is warrior philosophy made physical. Julia picked up her utensil, poked at her purple paste. It's just martial arts. Just? Vorn's laugh was like rocks grinding. Child Kraelor warriors are taught from hatching that our forearms make us superior, that our strength and scales make us apex predators. His scarred hand clenched into a fist. You demonstrated that we are fools. Across the hall, Vex entered with Than. His regenerated arm moved stiffly, scales still pale pink. He saw Julia sitting with Vorn and stopped dead, all four arms going rigid. Vorn noticed. Without turning, he called out, Vex, come here. The young Kraelor approached slowly, Than trailing behind, both looking like they were walking toward their executions. What did you learn from your match? Vorn asked. Vex's scales flushed through several colors. That humans are stronger than they look? Wrong. Vorn's tail slapped the floor hard enough to crack the tile. Try again. Vex's yellow eyes darted to Julia. That I don't know how to fight. Closer, but still wrong. You know how to fight. What you don't know is how to think. Vorn paused. Combat is not about strength. It is about understanding leverage, timing, anatomy. This human understood your anatomy better than you do. She knew which joints bend wrong ways, which nerves to strike. She thought, you just flexed. Vex's ridge patterns went pale. Yes, Elder Vorn. Sit, Vorn commanded. Both young Kraelor sat. Julia continued eating. Vorn leaned forward, his three arms folding on the table. Human Julia, I have a proposition. I want you to teach. 1 session per week. Show our warrior students these human combat techniques. I will ensure you are compensated with credits and full academy protection. Julia looked at him, at Vex and Than sitting rigid, at Jex, who'd appeared at her elbow, whiskers vibrating. Do it, Jex whispered. Do you know what this means? Julia set down her utensil. 5 credits per session, and they have to ask nicely. Vorn's laugh shook the table. Done! He extended one massive scarred hand. Julia shook it, her small hand engulfed in his scaled grip. One condition, she added. Vex is my first student. Vex's scales went through rapid color changes. What? I'm not? You will learn, Vorn interrupted, or you will explain to your breeding pit why you were expelled for cowardice. Vex's forearms sagged. Yes, Elder. Julia picked up her utensil again. First lesson is tomorrow. Don't be late. She paused, looked directly at Vex. And bring your own lunch. The meal hall erupted in clicking, hissing, thrumming laughter. Vex's scales flushed dark crimson. Than covered his mandibles, shoulders shaking. Jex climbed onto the bench next to Julia. You're going to be the most famous human in Academy history. Julia shrugged, continued eating. But as she chewed her purple paste, the corner of her mouth twitched. Not quite a smile, but close.